Pastures Hospital. It's hard to imagine that 20 or 30 years ago this building and the buildings around housed some 2,000 patients, and it was here that this week's subject of great psychiatric minds of the century began his working life. You remember in last week's programme we discussed the life of Sigmund Freud and Dr. Carl Gustav Jung. This week we talk about someone who perhaps was not quite so well known, but has had just as much an impact on the development of the care of the mentally ill, Keith Waters. Pastures Hospital Church, one of the few remaining pieces of the original architecture. Young Keith wouldn't have been seen here then because he was a heathen from an early age and not particularly interested in God. He was a Derby boy, obsessed at times with football, probably frustrated at not being a great athlete himself. Known at school as Weedy Waters, he was repeatedly bullied by the older children, and his only escape was to fantasise about helping those even less able than himself. So it was to here at Pastures Hospital that as a 16-year-old he came as a young space cadet, young, immature, virginal, to study psychiatric nursing. It may have been a short career. Unpopular in those early days, his compatriots tied him into a laundry basket and threw him into the lake, and only by good fortune did he manage to escape from that watery grave and go on to be the great person that we know today. What has marked out Keith Waters as that special person? Let's go down to the social club and explore. Here we are at Mikalova Country Park and Social Club, the club as it was called. Of course, rather like the church, Keith wouldn't have spent much time here either, being agoraphobic and antisocial most of his life. In fact, one of the few expressions of individuality were his well-known homoerotic socks, rather like Freud and his cigars. What was it then that made Keith stand out amongst his contemporaries? Perhaps a sense of fair play, of honesty, of commitment to patient care, or maybe it was just bloody-mindedness, an anal retentive personality and a desire to be as difficult and obstructive as possible. Either way, people have benefited from those years of persistent, irritating nagging. Service users today have access to services that they could only have imagined when Keith trained here to electrocute people, inject them with various diseases and put them into insulin comas. In that short 2 or 3 decades, Keith brought psychiatry into the 21st century. Here we are in downtown Derby. Not very far from here, in the Lick Church shambles, somewhere that we can't visit today because of footpads, thieves and much beggary. Not a safe place for film crews. But it was in those very humble surroundings that, with a small lottery grant, Keith and a few others began their work for the transgendered and other unfortunates. From that small, rat-infested office, they gradually, by gathering funds through the manipulation of finances, to here, the resource centre, although we never quite worked out what the resource was. Sadly, we can't go into the resource centre because it's now part of a secure unit housing the notorious British serial killer Trina Heaton. Rather like Hannibal the Cannibal, Trina the Screamer, as she was known, tortured and bound her victims before killing them. We're not allowed to film even at the windows because of confidentiality. Here, the Flat Pack Four were born, rather like the Gang of Four in China and the Gang of Four who set up the Social Democratic Party. The Gang of Four here were pioneers in the work of liaison psychiatry. Amongst them there was Dr. Love Daly, Captain Kirk, the Minja Ninja, as she was known, Madame Clitrix, and of course Keith himself. He quickly developed as the leader of this group, shoving the others out mercilessly and not allowing them to get a look in at doing anything, in fact. And although he never actually applied for the job of team leader, he just sort of took it over, really. The others eventually moved on. We would have liked to have interviewed some of the team who worked with Keith during those days, but sadly most of them have either committed suicide or are detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Also at that time, after the collapse of the Flat Pack Four, others joined the team. Dee Sharif, the marvellous Jennifer Marsden, Vanessa, myself humbly, later on Sue McGoran, and latterly Rita Guest. Also there was Ian Elliott, who we don't talk about, as he escaped to Australia and is currently waiting extradition for crimes of an unsavoury nature. But this is where we developed our service and where Keith was first nominated, although didn't win, the Nobel Prize for interfering. What became of those people? It's quite interesting. They had a very mixed fortune. Dee Sharif, it turned out, had an unnatural passion for chickens and eventually succumbed to insanity and today lives on a special farm in Yorkshire. Jenny Marsden was very successful, becoming the Director of Educational Services for an NHS trust in the north of England. Rita Guest, most interestingly of all, turned out to be the war criminal Dr. Josef Mengele. It seems strange, but it explains her many years of travelling and the time she spent in Venezuela undergoing sexual reorientation. Sadly, Rita's great age meant that she died before she could be tried at the International Court of Justice. What is Keith's legacy? Well, it's true to say that had he not turned liaison psychiatry into a personal hobby, that the team would probably have been disbanded many years ago or absorbed into something called the crisis team. That would have been a tragedy. And as we've never worked out what the crisis team actually does, there wouldn't be very much to say at this point. For those of you that would like to find out more about Keith's life, I shall be publishing a book in the autumn called Keith, the Man and the Mouse, which will chronicle not only his early days, but try to probe deeply into a man of few emotions but tremendous intellect. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned for a personal message to follow.
Hi Keith, wishing you all the very best in your retirement. It's been great working with you.
Yeah, happy retirement, Keith.
Wish you a great retirement, Keith. Really enjoy it.
You go.
Oh, sorry. I hope you have a lovely retirement, Keith, and remember me with fondness. Bye.
Cheerio, Keith. You will be missed. I'm sure they won't be able to replace you, mate. Cheerio.
Hi Keith, happy retirement from Immaculate, a student nurse. Thanks.
Hi Keith, just to say have a happy retirement. Enjoyed working with you very much over the few years. I hope everything goes well for you. Take care.
Hi Keith, I hope you enjoyed our little tribute to your many years of work, tongue-in-cheek of course. I have to thank my director and cameraman, Mr. Richard Waters, who is behind the camera so you can't see him, without whom we could not have brought you this masterpiece of cinematography. On a serious note, I hope that you have a splendid evening tonight and you like the small offering that we've got for you and Pat to enjoy your retirement. On a personal note, I'd like to say that the last 7 years have probably been the happiest of my working life, and that's in no small part thanks to you. You've irritated the hell out of me, and I'm sure I've done the same to you for a lot of that time, but at the end of the day, dysfunctional as we are, we've, I think, managed to get on and to achieve quite a lot. They say that you don't miss good things until they've gone, and I expect that will be very true after you've left, that we realise just how much we did depend on your support and kindness. The late King George V rather prophetically said of his successor Edward VIII that the boy will ruin himself within 12 months after I've gone. I hope that's not the future of the team, and I hope that the work that you've done so thoroughly in terms of the RAID project will come to fruition. None of this would have been possible had you not taken the initiative years ago to really work for and towards a better understanding of people who self-harm who are suicidal, and I know that many service users have been helped over the years are not in a position maybe to give you their thanks, but I know that if they were here they would be very grateful for all that work, as we are for the years that you've managed us. Have a great retirement. I don't imagine it will last very long, because I'm sure that you'll be bored inside 6 months and you'll be wanting to do something again, because you have to interfere, you know, it's just not possible for you to relax. So I expect you will pop up in some other capacity, and that we're not entirely rid of you. But for now at least, bye-bye.